Hey flower buds, and welcome to another episode of Mindful Mondays. So this one's going to be a lot of fun. I want to talk about something that a lot of us shy away from, a lot of us are not comfortable with, and that is rejection. I'm going to be honest with you, the only reason this came to mind was because I'm kind of back in the dating pool. Lots of awkwardness. Maybe one of these days I'll get on Instagram stories and just tell you some of the weird things that have happened. For today's subject, I really want to talk about rejection because I've noticed how interesting it is to kind of watch how we deal with that, and I want to kind of provide context to what can be happening while that's going on. Initially, a lot of us have this drawback and recoil, when we're rejected by something. Now, of course, with me, I'm thinking of dating right now, but you could also be thinking of job opportunities. You could be thinking about, anything that you go out for and you just get that big no or that not right now. Instead of, having that immediate drawback and that recoil of oh God, that happened. You can kind of lean into it and start to look at it a little bit closer. Because of course, with everything, when we lean in and we look closer, we gain some power over it. See what's going on, but also be a loving witness to all of that instead of just being in that reaction state. Now, I just did a great Mindful Monday video last month about mourning and finding joy in the morning. So that is a really great piece of rejection that happens because you do mourn that opportunity or that person, that relationship, that job offer, whatever it was. You start to really get into a place where you're grieving over that lost bit of an opportunity. And that is okay. I'm not saying we don't have to do that part because it's actually a really, really healthy bit of it because it happens. We just have to be there and show up for it. When you notice how you mourn things, whether it be trying to numb or trying to eat your way out of it or trying to drink your way through it, whatever it is. I used to have this horrible saying, I don't want to think about it, so I'll drink about it. Not a good thing to do. A lot of us have that mindset. Don't be afraid to go through that mourning process, and I highly recommend watching that video so you can understand more of that mourning process, because I get really in depth in that, and that was a whole video in itself. Next, you have this realization of requirement, right? So we draw back, we recoil, we start to get upset, we mourn, and then we have this realization of oh crap, yeah, I wasn't able to do this because X, Y, and Z is required, right? I wasn't allowed to have that person because I'm not pretty enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not smart enough, or I didn't get that job opportunity because I'm not qualified enough, I'm not in a good enough place, I'm not old enough. Take a step back and still have that moment of realization with requirement, but use it as kind of a template for the future, right? Well, maybe you think you're not qualified enough. Okay, stop there, right? Don't get too involved in that and too caught up in that. Instead, allow yourself to see, okay, what can I do to qualify myself for it? What can I do to get to that point? What books can I read? What kind of background materials can I explore? What kind of experiences can I have? Make a list of these things, And then instead of just staring at that list and, really obsessing over each thing, have a second column where you're able to kind of see what it takes to get there, right? Put an arrow up to it, gonna read more books to get to this point, or gonna wear higher heels to be taller. Maybe not that one, but you get what I'm saying. Because there's always a way to advance to where you want to be. And when we kind of look back and see what it is that we desire to be, instead of getting obsessed with it, we can really work on ourselves and be that person rather than wallowing in the fact that you're not that person yet. You're evolving in every moment, and it's an opportunity to change and explore. The second piece of that is to kind of reevaluate the self-separation that's happening, right? Because when we get into that self-separation, initially, it's usually, here I am, here's what I'm not, and here's that thing I want, and here's what it is, and we have this big disconnect, right? If you stay in that, you will never have it, because every time you think of that, you're having more of those self-sabotaging thoughts, and you are moving farther and farther away from it. We can still have the self-separation, but instead make it from that self-sabotage, right? Separate from the sabotage enough to say, you know what, I can have whatever it is, and refer back to that list and find out, you know, I may not be there right now, but I can, you know, step up to that evolution by doing this, this, and this. Next, and I am a huge offender of this one, is the separation of the perceived other. So what I mean by that is we start to like get ourselves in a box, and like if somebody said no to that job offer, all of a sudden you're attacking their character, right? All of a sudden it's, well, they're probably doing favoritism and nah. Or with the guys and girls, you know this. You walk by guys,
hey, what's up, beautiful?
You're like, don't do me. And then all of a sudden they're like,
whatever. Your butt ain't even that big.
It's that separation of other, right? Like, ew, you're this, you're that. A lot of the times, like, I am really bad with mental name calling. Like, oh, they're a little that's why they're not accepting me to do this or saying yes to the relationship, blah, 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 blah. The whole thing that happens. You make up the story about this other person, it has no truth to it. And that is when we start to really perpetuate that unreal other, right? We start to build this whole world in our minds where this person is out to get us and everything is their fault and yada, yada, yada. Instead of taking an introspective look and really seeing what we can do better, what we can do different, and, you know, maybe why it just wasn't a good fit. Last piece of it is acceptance, right? A lot of the time with rejection, we get into this place where we start to like accept the defeat. Like all of a sudden it's, yeah, you know, I probably wasn't smart enough, or I wasn't tall enough, I wasn't pretty enough. A big pity party. And that, I think, is the most frustrating part of rejection. And I've caught myself doing it. I'm not saying that I haven't. I want to kind of take a step back from that and change that. Instead of the acceptance of defeat, why don't we accept a challenge? Okay, yeah, I didn't get that one. But you know what? I know what I can do to get to that place that I want to be, and that is definitely doable. You're able to really accept that challenge and get there and evolve and allow yourself to really be someone different. See, that's the thing. We're not meant to be these stagnant and bored and rejected creatures. We're meant to evolve and to change and to explore. A part of that is sometimes hearing no. Right? The no is just as important as hearing the yes. So allow yourself to hear that no, to see that that thing doesn't pan out or whatever, because there's always a reason for it. And there's always a way to learn and grow and advance from that. So thank you guys today. I know this has kind of been a funny video. I highly recommend watching the Joy from the Morning video, because that goes into mourning more in depth. And that's an extremely important part of this entire process. So as always, recognize where you're at, allow yourself to be there and go through it, but also, you know, look at how to move forward. Look at how it's changing you and how it's allowing you to bloom. So thank you once again, Flower Buds, for joining me for today's Mindful Monday. It's always a wonderful experience to connect with you. Of course, you can continue to bloom with me, whether it be subscribing to this channel, subscribing to the podcast, or linking up with me on the blog, as well as all my social media, which is of course down in the description box. I love connecting with you guys and sharing stories. On my Instagram stories, maybe I'll tell you about some of my dating debacles. I'll see you next time here in the garden.